Natalie Wong in Beijing. We begin with the latest ratcheting of tensions on the Korean peninsula, where the U.S. military has begun the installation process of the controversial THAAD anti-missile defense system in South Korea. Early on Wednesday morning, 6 trailers carrying THAAD parts, which include the X-band radar and the mobile launchers, entered its planned deployment site in Sonju. Hundreds of local residents clashed with the police in an attempt to halt the transportation. This as the USS Carl Vinson strike group steams towards the peninsula and is estimated to reach eastern waters on Wednesday or Thursday, following the U.S. nuclear submarine Michigan's arrival at the port of Busan. The Carl Vinson fleet is set to participate in a joint drill with South Korea later this week. On Tuesday, the South Korean Navy held a joint live fire exercise with the U.S. in a show of their alliance against the DPRK. Earlier, our correspondent in Seoul, Shane Ham, told us there are concerns among the public in South Korea that war could break out with the DPRK. Take a listen.
I think living here in South Korea, you somewhat become desensitized to these sort of tensions or rhetoric, because here, literally where I'm sitting from, just about an hour's drive away is a demilitarized zone, and you have thousands and thousands of troops as well as artillery pointed towards this direction. But for South Koreans in general, again, most of the population here has lived with a divided peninsula here. The Korean War ended about more than 6.5 decades ago. So this constant threat of the DPRK is in the lives of South Koreans. So there isn't any evidence, if you want to point towards evidence of possible hoarding of basic necessities. There isn't any proof of that. People are going about their daily lives. I think what people are more interested in at this point is the presidential election on May 9th, who the next administration would be, because obviously South Korea has gone through a lot of political domestic turmoil here in the past couple of months.
A U.S. Navy-guided missile submarine has arrived in South Korean waters, and meanwhile, the aircraft carrier USS Carl Vinson and its strike group could arrive in the waters off the Korean peninsula any day soon, like we mentioned earlier. Now, CGTN's Jim Spellman has more on the U.S. show of force.
The USS Michigan, a 170-meter-long U.S. Navy nuclear-powered submarine, pulled into an ROK port on Tuesday. A show of force as tensions remain high between the U.S. and the DPRK. The massive submarine carries about 150 Tomahawk cruise missiles, each capable of striking the DPRK. Meantime, the USS Carl Vinson aircraft carrier group is making its way toward the Korean peninsula. These highly visible U.S. military maneuvers come despite dramatic warnings from the DPRK.
Now that the U.S. has pulled out its sword to kill us, we also will pull out our grand sword of justice and fight to the end. And we will kill the U.S. imperialists with our strong and revolutionary power. Our nuclear forces stand at the core.
Also on Tuesday, representatives from the U.S., Japan, and the ROK met in Tokyo for what has been described as a brainstorming session on the DPRK issue.
We agreed among the three of us that we will coordinate all actions, diplomatic, military, economic, regarding North Korea. Will continue to work very closely among the three of us together, as well as with our international partners.
And China continues to call for calm.
We hope that all parties, including Japan, can work with China to promote an early peaceful resolution of the issue, play the role and put forth the effort, and assume the responsibility that they should.
On Friday, the U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson will chair a meeting of the UN Security Council. Earlier this week, President Trump suggested the U.S. could call for more sanctions against the DPRK. But on Friday, Secretary Tillerson is only expected to push for stricter implementation of existing sanctions. Jim Spellman, CGTN, Washington.
Despite these messages from the U.S., the attitude of the U.S. administration towards Pyongyang seems to be changeable and unpredictable. For example, in a joint press statement held with South Korean acting President Hwang Kyo-an on April the 17th, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence warned the DPRK not to test U.S. President Donald Trump's resolve over its nuclear and ballistic missile programs. He added that the U.S. and its allies were running out of patience with Pyongyang. But also Pence declared in Sydney during his Asia visit, the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula can still be achieved peacefully. On April the 14th, Trump's administration settled on its strategy on Pyongyang, noting there would be maximum pressure and engagement, including military options. However, during an interview with the Independent Journal Review, U.S. State Secretary Rex Tillerson noted that Washington does not want a conflict with the DPRK. He said broader sanctions are possible. Now turning to more domestic issues of the DPRK, the gasoline supplies in the country have been limited for the past week, with gas prices almost doubling. Vehicles queued in long lines at the few open gas stations Tuesday. Gas stations mainly serving foreigners were also closed in Pyongyang. Only vehicles with diplomatic plates are guaranteed fuel. The cause of the shortage or how long it will last is still unknown. Drivers in the DPRK usually buy a gas ticket before they refuel their vehicles. Now, the price of a 15-kilogram oil ticket is now almost 2 times higher than usual. And Pyongyang says it has conducted its largest ever combined military exercises amid tensions on the Korean Peninsula, and they were supervised by leader of the DPRK, Kim Jong-un. We earlier spoke to Raphael Wilbur about the possibility of a new DPRK nuclear or missile test.
I think that in the build-up to these big days in April, there was endless speculation in the media and among analysts and experts, and of course that got extra attention because of the new US President Donald Trump highlighting the DPRK as what he called a problem in his talks, his first meeting with the Xi Jinping in Florida. And I think that the show of force, the escalation of the military presence around the Korean Peninsula has also led everyone to be more worried that this could result in some kind of miscalculation. Not really military strike, hopefully not, but some kind of miscalculation. So we've got through now the 15th of April and the 25th of April, these big days in the DPRK calendar. But I think that what the DPRK has made very clear from the start of this year, similar to before, is that the DPRK has got its capability to test another nuclear device. That would be its 6th nuclear test. And it has the plan, it says that it is in the final stages of preparation for testing a long-range ballistic missile. Of course, there's no date for either of those things, and hopefully, now that we've got through April, and when the US-South Korea military exercise ends at the end of April, hopefully that will provide a brief respite, a moment to return to calm and other options rather than more rhetoric and more shows of force. But at the moment we can only say that up till now DPRK is determined to continue with these programs and will take those steps if it thinks it's necessary. Hopefully it won't be necessary in the near future.
For more on the Korean Peninsula tension, we earlier also talked to Saurabh Gupta, Asia-Pacific International Relations Specialist from the Institute for China-America Studies. He told us the recent provocative actions of the DPRK do not add its bargaining chips. Instead, he said, developing the DPRK's economy might foster its integration into the international community.
Kim Jong-un will not be chastened by sanctions or by a show of force, and he is not going to present himself to the diplomatic table. There needs to be an avenue open for diplomacy. And frankly, I would suggest actually the big game changer on the Korean Peninsula could be if the North Korean economy actually gets going. Then Kim Jong-un has something to consolidate, and it could be a basis to ease actually some of those tensions. The fact of the matter is that he has made progress on this front in the last couple of years. And so North Korea is not just only that basket case that people envision it to be. There is a potential that the place could get itself going, and that could be a game changer in terms of ameliorating tensions.
And that is a good thing, you see it as?
Oh, I absolutely see it as a good thing for two reasons. One, it gives him an incentive not to do his ballistic fanfare and his missile tests, etc., and consolidate and consolidate his economic security. It also creates an avenue where you do begin to have some leverage over him because he does get internationally engaged. But the fact is, just like Vietnam, managed to, in the late 1980s and early 1990s, had an economic reform program and gradually integrated into international society. We would hope that Kim also does that, but that has to be on the basis of him following international UN Security Council resolutions and hopefully treating his people better, which I think he has an interest in.